me more, what I tell my patients is my practice is a blend of trying to treat what's wrong with you, but also fix what's not right with you. So it's this idea of like not just treating disease, but also restoring health, because the best outcomes honestly come from that bridge.
Thank you so much for joining us for another awesome episode of Bioenergetics Beat. I'm Heather Gray, a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and certified bioenergetic practitioner, and today's episode is brought to you today by Nikki, Unleash the Wellness Within. It's a non-invasive, easily affordable, highly effective approach to optimize wellness. It's a wearable device that puts frequency-based better life in your hands and on your wrist. You're going to want to make sure to stick to the very end because we have an awesome giveaway you're not going to want to miss out on. But as usual, you're not going to want to miss out on one word that my next guest has to say, because we're going to be diving in all things Lyme disease. So let's welcome Dr. Cory Tichauer, yay, to the show. And I pronounced it properly, so that's a double yay. Awesome
From now
sauce.
on, we can just
Dr.
say
Cory,
Dr. Cory. Yeah.
thank you for that. I appreciate it. It'll definitely help with the flow of things because it's a little different than, I'm all Tichauer. That's probably what you get normally, huh?
Right. Yeah, exactly. People will say, are you aware that you were always destined to be in this space because your last name is
This.
Tick in it? I'm like, close, but not the same. And no, I didn't realize that until like 10 years in,
Yeah,
at
absolutely,
least.
absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself, doctor. Why'd you become a doctor to begin with? Why the Lyme space world? Because that's a very, very complex, hard world to begin with. I don't know too many people who get into it without some sort of pain to purpose story. So I'm just kind of curious as to about your background.
Yeah, let's see. How am I going to summarize this in a quick way? Or I shouldn't say quick, but poignant way.
You've got 10 minutes.
Okay, well, that's a while. Well, I've always wanted to be a physician. I had a father who was in medical sales, so I
Mm.
traveled a lot with him, spent a lot of time in hospitals, and always was attracted to the idea of doing what I could to help people. So I spent a lot of my early years in hospitals, working as a candy striper, volunteering in emergency rooms. Went straight into a pre-medical program at Cornell University as a neurobiology major with an intention of um, getting into medicine and doing what I could to help people. Um, my life was changed when I spent a semester abroad in Nepal, actually, as part of an exchange program with Tribhuvan University in Kathmandu. And during that time, we all had to do an independent research project. And I was interested in traditional healing and the application in medicine. So I dropped my neurobiology major. I became an anthropology major for a semester. I know, right?
I
And
love anthropology. That was one of my favorite courses in college that I took. And there only was two routes at the time, right? You could teach or you could research. And I didn't want to do either, but I loved anthropology. Oh my God.
same reason I had for math. I loved math, but it was like teaching or becoming an actuary. I was like, no. So, but but yeah, so part of my time there was doing a research study, and I was able to spend a month in a village working with a shaman. And during that time, what can I say? I took things very scientifically, like the good pre-med student I was at the time, and documented a lot and ended up writing up my findings. And what I found was at the end of that month, for all of these elaborate 3-hour healing rituals that people would go through, that the outcomes or the efficacy of success in resolving their issues was over 70%, which is about what we get in this country. So it really challenged me to examine my motives for becoming a physician and what healing really is. And it left me with an identity crisis, to be honest. And so
I'm like applauding it over here. Like, yay.
yeah, so and it made me do a lot of soul searching. So I finished out my senior year, and at the second half of my senior year, right before I took my MCATs, my mom sent me an article on naturopathic medicine. And as soon as I read that, I thought, oh my gosh, this is so what is appealing to me. I had at the time a real strong fear of doing the same thing every day, all day long. That repetition to me is something that is very off-putting. Like it's something I don't like. I love the dynamism of functional medicine and individual cases and working with things like that. And so the idea of like doing something like every day I'm going to do proctology or cardiology, it also had kind of a fear for me. So when I read about naturopathic medicine, I thought, chronically ill people are the people who are the most underserved, the least diagnosed, and it's the group of sufferers who continue to increase epidemiologically in society. We just see a rise in chronic illness over and so the idea is what could I do to help that? So I ended up reading this seminal paper on vitalism versus mechanism, and that really clicked everything for me. And I said, you know what? I'm going to change course and I'm going to enroll into a naturopathic medical school instead of moving towards Cornell Medical School or a different school. And to the shock of my family, as you can imagine, the idea that the recognition and all the accolades of going into one of those other schools and what are you doing going into something that we don't know about. But I've really never
You
looked back.
quack. How
Yeah,
could
exactly. But honestly, it prepared me a lot. It gave me, I spent 5 years in medical school. I was able to learn all of the aspects of clinical and physical diagnosis and, um, labs and all of the standard meds that I wanted to learn. But I was also able to, learn about herbs and homeopathy and nutrition and nutraceuticals. And I mean, the list goes on and on. And it really allowed me to bridge my practice from day zero, which was March of 2004 when I first started. And so anymore, what I tell my patients is my practice is a blend of trying to treat what's wrong with you, but also fix what's not right with you. So it's this idea of like not just treating disease, but also restoring health, because the best outcomes honestly come from that bridge. And yeah, that's sort of the short version of it. I graduated, like I said, in 2003, started practice on my own in 2004, and with an intention of getting into chronic illness. And by 2005, I found out about Lyme disease, and I thought, oh my gosh, I feel like I need to go back to school to learn about this. And so we in Southern Oregon have quite a pretty high prevalence, especially on the West Coast, Northern California, Southern Oregon is going to be the highest incidence. So it was something that I, started to encounter in looking at chronic fatigue and seronegative arthritis and neuroinflammatory issues and, all the things for why we call Lyme the great mimicker. Um, and by 2008, I had the opportunity to preceptor with a physician in the Bay Area. In 2009, I was able to get a fellowship or a mentorship with ILADS to study with another physician in the Bay. And I just kept working to advance my own education. And now I say I work in a Venn diagram, my practice between chronic infectious illness, of which vector-borne illness, Lyme disease, Bartonella, Babesia, all those things is one of those bubbles. Immune dysfunction and autoimmunity is another big part of that and a huge aspect of what we see with chronic illness and chronic infectious illness. Environmental medicine, something I know is something people are becoming more and more aware of with all the things in our environment, microplastics and mold toxins. And ultimately, structure. I have a daughter with, hypermobility, and so I got into Ehlers-Danlos actually, and became certified as an Ehlers-Danlos provider. And so I deal a lot with, the implications of hypermobility and its effect on the neurovascular system, and it all kind of becomes some big puzzle for every person. So that's a little bit about me, Heather.
Boy, you really do like to take on the most of the complicated cases, that's for sure. Um, yeah, no, that's absolutely fascinating. I love it. You're just like, I'm not afraid of a challenge. Bring it on. And it's funny though, you talked about the repetitiveness, But I still found it to be kind of repetitive. You know, people think that Lyme is this big complex thing, and in one way it is, but another way it's not. You know, there's certain, you know, check marks. You know, crappy environment, toxin overload. You know, crappy detox genes. You know, trauma. You know, you know, check, 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 check. And so, even though it seems really complicated and like everybody is so different, I mean, really, when I was working with folks with Lyme, it was all really, you know, there's just combination of mold and trauma and heavy metals and parasites and, oh, you've got mercury in your mouth and have you checked cavitations? You know, it was just kind of crazy how they all still kind of fit almost in the same box.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and that's the puzzle, right? And those are all the variables. And ultimately, it's the part that I enjoy so much is being able to not be under a time restriction, not having to, do these 10 or 15-minute acute care visits, being able to sit down, spend an hour or 2 hours with people in new patient cases, and work to really unravel all of these elements, like you're saying, because it is a big puzzle, and it's something that while there's this overwhelming, complicated nature, you're very right. There's like common denominators, and it sometimes I do think becomes overly complicated, and it needs to be simplified down a little in a lot of people, because nothing should take 2 years of detox and then another 3 years of antimicrobials and then another. Realistically, we should be seeing results and outcomes within some reasonable amount of time, like anything in medicine. Um, whether you're using a Western medical approach like IV antibiotics or whether you're going to try and use targeted herbal therapies, um, either scenario, there should be some defined amount of time where we say, hey, look, if we're combining all of the sort of things we need to do, like supporting detox and treating biofilms and improving cell-mediated immunity and addressing these infections or these viruses, and we have all those pieces in place, well, great. We should think, what is it going to be? 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, but something along those lines. We should be able to quantify our improvement, because it's not smoke and mirrors like so many people make it sound. It's definable.
I have this ridiculously long intake form that I'd have people do like every 3 months because I tell them if we're not moving the needle even just a little bit in 3 months, there's something that we still need to unearth and uncover and maybe go a different direction. And I think that was one of my biggest pet peeves is working with these people. I've been on this same protocol for a year and a half and I still feel like crap. And I'm like, God, what? Why? Like,
Right?
and they didn't think to do anything different. It's just like, oh, let's just do more of the same. Like, that's insanity.
That is insanity. And that exact statement, I love that statement. What is the definition of insanity, right? This idea of doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And I mean, ultimately, it's something I get from other providers. I see it in people, like this idea of like, hey, I've been doing this for forever and I'm still not any better. And the answer is, okay, well, let's change our approach. Maybe we need to look at this more from an immune side. Maybe we need to look at this more from your environment. Maybe we need to look and address your limbic system and trauma in your body. And maybe there's something that hasn't been addressed that's an obstacle to health for you at this stage, right? And and ultimately it's also forming a relationship with the person who's in front of you, right? Like creating that space and that trust and that common goal, because people not getting better is just as disappointing for me as it is for them, right? I put a lot of investment in my time and my energy, and my sincerity in every person I sit down with, because I my reward is seeing people thrive and go back to work and go back to their families and their children, and be able to function with not just wellness, but like, happiness and thriving again. So yeah.
Absolutely. Ah, that's beautiful. All right, this is a great spot. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to dive deeper into, kind of how are some of the different ways that you work with folks with Lyme. And we also want to get into the product Zen Men, which is you've got a master class coming up in a couple of weeks when this airs. For Lyme disease awareness. So we're just gonna dive more into the meat and potatoes when we come back. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Nikki Wellness Technology offers game-changing support to long-time Lyme sufferers like Ellen.
Initially, probably bit in the late 80s, mid to late 80s, 1980s, and it was diagnosed 10 years later in 1996, and went through 5.5 years of antibiotic treatment. Also had Babesia and ehrlichiosis, so which I think this is a pretty traditional story in many ways. Lots of doctors weren't treating it aggressively. I lived in southeastern Massachusetts and finished my long treatment of antibiotics in 2002, and then I think it was in 2008 I started going on about every 2 years again, having to have antibiotics. So now it's almost 5 years without them, and it feels fantastic. And I wear it about 6 hours a day, and that keeps me functioning. I've had a very busy life and loving it. It's been a game changer. And I've turned quite a few people onto it. It's just kind of made me almost forget about Lyme disease, which is pretty awesome.
Nikki Wellness Technology, delivering frequency-enhanced health. wearenikki.com.
Fantastic. Welcome back. Well, are you having as much fun as I am? I hope so. If you're not, then you need to check your pulse, because we're dropping all kinds of nuggets right now. I would love to dive in deeper on, how are some of the different ways you work with folks with Lyme disease to get the outcomes that you do. And then also let's dive into what is ZenMen and why are we talking about it?
Yeah, so ZenMen is a consumer or retail company that offers herbal products to support recovery, or I should say, the health for different potential conditions that people are dealing with. So that may include tick-borne illness is one of those. It could involve GI issues or H. pylori. I personally am involved with helping to, improve. I'm helping to improve the formulations for the company, and creating some protocols. So just like we talked about earlier, the idea of like allowing people to maybe go through a questionnaire, find out what maybe some of their primary issues, and then have some recommendations for things that they can start on with some prescribed rational period of time to expect some results, right? And they already have some really, really great formulas right now that I'm like very happy to showcase in terms of what they're doing. That includes their tick immune formula, which is a really, really neat product. It's called Tick Immune Support. I think it's great because foundationally it offers therapies like Japanese knotweed and cat's claw and cystis and cryptolepsis and artemisia, all that provide antimicrobial benefits directly against potential Borrelia or co-infections, but it also offers immune support. There are things that, convey and improve the immune balance and prevent dissemination of infection into the body, addressing oxidative stress. There's things on there, again, like sarsaparilla, and Chinese skullcap to address that inflammatory response. There's serrapeptase in there, which is a proteolytic enzyme that can act as a biofilm breaker. So as a foundational product, I think it's a really excellent product and formulation. It's something that I hope to improve on in the future, of course, as we break things apart. But it's one of their products that is offered now that I think is wonderful. In addition to that, monolaurin complex, black walnut hull extract as a tincture, and garlic bulb extract all work synergistically to support things and offer people right off the bat an opportunity to try things at a very affordable, I would say the most affordable, honestly, in the industry price point. Really, like knowing this industry as well as I do, I'm constantly impressed
Well,
by what they're
you
doing.
can't see, but I just gave him a funny look because the word affordable and then anything having to do with Lyme disease just don't normally go in the same sentence together. That's actually part of the reason when I first found Nikki, this
Yeah.
is kind of a funny story. Most of the frequency machines that I had been using, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. So when this kept coming across my radar at 1,500, I was like, there's no way this thing works for 1,500. There's no way. And then, of course, after something comes to me like 3 times, I'm like, okay, God, I get it. So then I started looking into it. And so, yeah, it's fascinating to see now things that are coming out on the market that are more accessible to people, because really we got to be able to get this stuff in the hands of everybody that's sick, not just the rich.
You're right. And I mean, it is. It's an expensive illness to deal with, and that's the bottom line. And I mean, I don't need to tell you or your listeners, it's always a struggle with trying to find that balance between, addressing yourself and what you're worth, and also being able to provide
Live and exist.
treatment, support, like,
Yeah.
yeah, everything goes up. And, whether we're using IV therapy, like, we did a really seminal, amazing research study on the use of high dose intravenous vitamin C in Lyme disease. We were able to um, get an actual institutional review board approval. So we actually got on PubMed and looked, and we were able to add DMSO and EDTA into that mix to improve tissue perfusion and address biofilms. But, again, it's an amazing treatment, but the cost is significant. So, um, as part of that, this is going back to the Zenman piece. These herbal products are great entry points because ultimately they give you an opportunity to say, hey, are these things going to help? And if they do help and they resolve, great. We've just helped one more person in this world. If they give you improvement, but maybe not resolution, it'll provide confidence that if you're going to reach out to a provider, that your investment in further testing or in further treatment is likely to yield results and give you improvement because you've sort of dipped your foot in and tested the waters a little bit. And all of these are things that I hope to go into and talk more about next month, as you mentioned, and I think about 3 weeks when we're doing the master class, the Lyme Awareness Master Class, as part of the Lyme Awareness Month, and I'll discuss more on potential treatment protocols. I'll try and go into the diagnostic aspects, which is a huge, huge maze to work through, and something we could spend the remaining of this podcast talking about, honestly, the pitfalls of testing and the benefits of each of the things, and how to monitor outcomes and how to look at all these cofactors that we already discussed, Heather, like, environmental things and immune things and other stuff. And all of that information on that masterclass I know is available on their website as far as something that can be signed up for. And I'll hopefully be able to offer a Q&A during that and actually answer questions for people and more. So
Ooh, that's awesome. I should sign up and sit there and just keep raising my hand.
yeah, you totally should. I'll just keep calling on you.
That's awesome. I do know, well, with it being an affordable company already, which is amazing, they have also
It
given
is.
our folks a discount code. So if you use Nikki 10, that's Nikki, all capital 10, you'll get a discount too on your product. So I'm actually looking forward to looking more into that. What are some of the other like flagship products that they have that you're really excited about that, might not be what you can find out there right now?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is going to be their H. pylori product. So that's
I
one
was
that I think.
hoping that's what you were going to bring up because I
Yeah,
just
so like
came out of the
I'm trying to
cancer
think.
world.
So, I've been affiliated with the company for a little over a month now. I'm very happy to be associated with them. A lot of the due diligence that I went through in making the decision to associate my name with them was looking at the quality of what they're doing, looking at their material safety data, looking to see that where they're sourcing their products and that they're validating what's in there. And I can tell you the owner of the company is someone who I believe is someone of incredible integrity and sincerity, and someone who himself, went through things and has personal motivation to help a lot of people. So there was a lot of commonality that really attracted me from the get-go. But to go back to your question, things that I really like. So I love their cryptolepsis. I think cryptolepsis is amazing. It's something that is an herb that really I don't think we knew a lot about until about 10 years ago, when Harold Buhner really started talking about it as an herbal option. But we know it's antimicrobial, we know it's immune supportive, and we know it deals with persister cells for Lyme, and it has antibabesial properties, and it improves things for Bartonella. So especially if layered or pulsed into treatments, we really can see improved outcomes. Yeah, you wanted me to talk a little bit about H. pylori. So H. pylori, as someone who again deals with all kinds of functional complaints, there's your standard triple or quadruple antibiotic treatment protocols, which sometimes work, sometimes don't, but leave you have consequences when you do antibiotics, right? I always tell my patients, if we're doing that, we're going to be using something that's not good for you to deal with something that's worse for you, right? We're making a trade-off, and we'll ultimately have to address that in the long run. But herbally, H. pylori is extraordinarily treatable, and it's not just extraordinarily treatable, it's successfully treated. And we can retest, and we know it's something that if you have chronic gastritis, you have pain, you have symptoms of this.
Ulcers.
Oh yeah, ulcers, of course, if you have the diagnosis, right? If you have a duodenal ulcer, well, you already know you're likely to have it. But even if you're, again, wanting to dip your toe into the water, like, do I have H. pylori or do I not? Can I afford to test or can I not? Like, the treatment options that are offered in the H. pylori support are things that are well tolerated, are not going to be harmful, don't have those consequences, right? So we see berberine, which is from Oregon grape, really, really effective antimicrobial, especially when used luminally, like in the GI tract, right? Really, really effective. Tends to have a balancing effect on the biome, and by helping to cull some of those opportunistic or somewhat pathogenic organisms. We see green tea extract in there, really powerful anti-inflammatory, really powerful at getting into that mucosal layer. We know that part of why we need to use things like bismuth subsalicylate or an H2 blocker or like something like a PPI, like a omeprazole, is to deal with that ability of this organism to embed itself in this mucosal wall. Mastic gum, probably the most well-known, oldest therapy for H. pylori, right? And then one of my favorites, really, Lactobacillus reuteri. Of course, as someone who's dealt a lot with Lyme and used a lot of antibiotics over these 20 years, restoration of the biome, which is so key to your immune system, not just your immune competence. I like to use the word immune competence, but immune tolerance, right? We forget that 70% of our T regulatory cells are in the gut associated lymphatic tissue. And that's where oral tolerance comes. But that's also where things like autoimmunity is generated. And I believe that a lot of these chronic things we're talking about, whether it be Lyme disease or mold illness or some other condition, even something like atherosclerosis, like, there's a balance between it being due to the bug, so to speak, or the toxin, so to speak, and the immune inflammatory response as a result, right? And so I'm going tangentially on Lactobacillus reuteri here on you with this topic, but point is, it's an underappreciated aspect of treating H. pylori, because just that single, what I call keystone species, has incredible outcomes at being able to sort of metaphorically crowd out this organism and make it so that your immune system can deal with it, or that the berberine and the mastic gum and the cat's claw in here can address it. And then I guess if I'm going to say one last thing about the H. pylori, licorice and zinc carnosine, right? Something that ultimately creates that mucilaginous layer and addresses the inflammation that's being caused from both the immune system and the bug in the gastric wall, and helps to immediately provides symptom relief. So just like the tick immune support, you've got something that's antimicrobial, you've got something that's immune restorative, and you've got something that's anti-inflammatory. So it's a good example of a really well thought out formula again.
That's incredible. Yeah, we're seeing, such a huge correlation. I mean, I just got done working with a pretty famous integrative breast cancer doctor for the last 6 months, and then I was in Lyme for 10 years before that. But in both worlds, we're seeing a huge correlation with H. pylori, and other infections when it comes to these diseases. And, when you can remove any sort of a block on the body, it's just going to help the immune system fight off, the Lyme or the cancer or whatever it is, just that much better. So, and I know, and it's so fascinating too. I'm newly dating, newly divorced, and knowing what I know, especially like 50% of the population has H. pylori, and it's transmitted through saliva. And I'm just like, how can I, go around and like test? Is there some sort of a kit that I can carry that, I have to prove that they don't have H. pylori before I kiss them? Like, how am I going to protect myself being single?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a big question, but to your favor, it's like strep. Think about how many people have strep. Think about how many people have Pseudomonas or Klebsiella or E. coli. I mean, the list goes on and on. And, I love, I one time gave a lecture some years back on this idea of like what makes a good bug go bad, right? So to speak, this idea of like, um, because we all have a lot of what are called carriage infections in our body. We all have organisms that we carry with us and that we acquire throughout our life well lived, really. And most of those should be things that either add some, benefit to our body or don't harm us. And ultimately, this goes back to our earlier conversation about like whether you're dealing with trauma or limbic stuff or a mold exposure or some like a lot of times when we see like chronic Lyme or we see chronic infectious illness, there may be scenarios where people have been um, doing fine. I don't want to say thriving, but doing well and are healthy and may have some of these things. And maybe it's other things. Maybe it's herpes, maybe it's strep, maybe it's other stuff, but there's a trigger, right? And there's that perfect storm events that happens between your emotional body, maybe your spiritual body and your physical body, and all of a sudden you now have a runaway train where some organism is multiplying and your immune system isn't maintaining. And now maybe it's not just maintaining, it's overreacting. And so now you've got this cascading sort of self-perpetuating problem, so to speak. So all of that is to say, I wouldn't worry about that H. pylori conversation. It's an interesting fact is if you look at, I want to say it's Haiti, something like 70% of the population of Haiti has H. pylori, or maybe it's even higher than that. I'd have to go back to my lecture. But if you look at that data, there's also an inverse relationship between gastric cancer. The countries with some of the highest levels of carriage infections of H. pylori, the lowest rates of gastric cancer, right? And so right. And so this really brings into question a lot of things like, well, what the heck's going on? Like, how is this maybe helping on some level or providing some benefit? We see this with helminths too, right? Like, and it's a whole
Mm.
nother topic. Like, um, there was a great book called The Evidence of Absence, a new way of looking at allergies and autoimmune disease that sort of discusses when we sterilized our grain supply and we removed like some of these for lack of a better word, like worms, but non-human parasites. These were never human parasites, so they never really did anything to us. But when we sterilized that grain supply, how many chronic illnesses went up within that decade? It's actually a really shocking number, and it really challenges to think like what a mature biome really is and how much it really impacts us. And again, we could go on and on, Heather. I could.
But I was mostly being facetious, but yeah, it was not great dinner conversation that I shouldn't have been having with a non-practitioner, talking about how everybody's got parasites and H. pylori. And needless to say, I did not get a kiss at the end of the date and I didn't get a return phone call. But no, I was being a little, tongue in cheek facetious
Of
because I
course.
know that if my immune system is robust and my nervous system is taken care of, like my body will keep in check what it's supposed to keep in check. And if not, we have these wonderful tools like products from Zen men to help with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
That was a funny way to
I
land
think
that
we're just
plane.
helping to, I think part of this podcast could be helping you to develop more of these sort of screening questions. Cause I like this as like, you're doing good screening on your dates when you like by asking these kinds of things. Cause I mean, really, would you want someone who wouldn't be able to answer a tongue-in-cheek question like that?
Probably not. I'd get bored very
Right.
fast. But anywho, and then I'm blushing again. Okay, let's move on. So here comes the shameless plug area of the show. So we're gonna plug Zen Men, but we also want to plug you. So if people wanted to find out more about you, where can they find information?
Well, you can certainly go to zenmenhealth.com and you'll see my bio, you'll see information on the products. If you're wanting to know more about me, I'm the physician at the Bear Creek Naturopathic Clinic in Medford, Oregon. So it's bearcreekclinic.com. There's also, you could Google me. I don't know what you'll find, but I imagine it won't be all bad. And yeah, I was telling you earlier, Heather, I love seeing people. I'm right now pretty booked with people. And I do offer free consults. I do also consult for Armin Labs, which is another lab in Germany that does testing for tick-borne illnesses and help with some of their lab interpretations. So I'm always happy to lend some small amount of time, even if it means helping to direct people to someone else who's competent and give them some idea of where they can go. And ultimately, I hope to find someone else who can join the practice in the near future so that we can open ourselves up to more folks. We have a large integrative clinic offering everything from IV therapies, from, again, antibiotics to IVC to ozone. We have a hyperbaric chamber. I was able to travel to Germany in 2015 to study at 5 different Lyme clinics, and we were able to bring back a biophoton device there that every clinic we actually saw in Germany used. So it sounds pretty out there, but again, the difference from my experience in Europe was there's not a lot of delineation between Western medicine and alternative medicine. It's just medicine to them. So when I discuss, like, I'm a naturopathic physician and I talk, like, I think the conceptualization of that for them is a little harder because they're already blending a lot of these things. And I say that, when we talk about, this device that we use, which ultimately is simply designed to try and move things out of that intracellular space so that we can actually, the immune system or the antimicrobial herbs or medications can treat that. Yeah, I mean, that's, I guess, how you'd learn a little bit about me and a little bit about my clinic. So
We do have a lot of medical professionals who listen to this show, so hopefully maybe that was what this is for too. Is somebody heard that and it'll be like, it'll apply and you'll get the help that you've been looking for.
I would love it. I would love it.
Everybody
Looking
else,
for the
make
right
sure to
person.
check him out in a few weeks for his masterclass. I'll have the link in the show notes. Also, make sure to visit wearenikki.com/podcast and enter in BioBeats to receive 10% off. And as usual, the way we love to show appreciation for our listeners is we give away a Nikki frequency device as well as a wellness set of frequencies, a $598 value on every single episode. So make sure to go to the show notes to find out how to enter. Good luck. How exciting! Help me congratulate April's winners. They get a Nikki frequency generating device as well as the wellness set of frequencies. It's a $598 value. Wow, wow, wow. All right, Miss Carol P, Donna H, Danelle M, and Hedge M. Congratulations to all of those that you didn't win. Keep on trying, keep on listening. Make sure to share, like, and subscribe. Thank you for joining us and have a healthy day.
Every year, a walk in the woods turns into a nightmare for hundreds of thousands bitten by a tick and made victims of Lyme disease. An insect the size of a sesame seed puts life on hold with chronic pain, fatigue, fever, and brain fog. Living with Lyme is hard. Getting it diagnosed can be just as hard. Even doctors might say, it's all in your head. The search for a proper diagnosis can be long, frustrating, and expensive. Lyme can mean financial ruin. Relationships suffer at home and at work. Even after diagnosis, recovery from Lyme can be far off. Lyme defies traditional medicine. More and more Lyme victims are turning to bioenergetics to get their lives back. Approaches that use the body's natural ability to heal and consider not just the body, but family history, mind, spirit, community, culture, and the environment. Bioenergetics takes healing to a cellular level. For victims who've waited so long for recovery, holistic medicine, functional medicine, and frequency delivery bring new hope. Our bodies are made up of billions of cells that communicate using frequencies. The idea of using frequencies to restore cellular function disrupted by Lyme is based on century-old science captured in a wearable device the size of a watch. Nikki's a wearable frequency delivery system designed to repair and optimize cellular function to speed recovery from Lyme. Doctors and owners are finding Nikki an effective complement to a personal Lyme recovery regimen. As warming Earth creates perfect conditions for ticks to thrive in, winning the fight against Lyme is becoming more urgent. The good news is that bioenergetic science is waging the battle against Lyme with new ideas and new products, including the Nikki Personal Frequency Delivery System. wearenikki.com.
For someone thinking of purchasing a device, what advice would you give them?
Do it. Just do it. It's I really have explored so many ways between essential oils. I mean, much of what the speakers said tonight, there's been my journey through the years. This is by far the quickest, the most painless. It's just really, for me, it was a synchronistic meeting, and I ended up being blessed with the device. So I feel that, universe is saying, we want you around for a while.
Nikki Wellness Technology. Delivering frequency enhanced health. wearenikki.com. The views, information, and opinions expressed in this content are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Freemedica. Freemedica Technologies, Inc. and its employees are not responsible, nor verifies accuracy any of the information contained in the following content. The primary purpose of this content is to educate and inform. This content does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services.